Hey guys, tonight we sink into the cold, damp alleyways of medieval Europe because you're an assassin, and it's not nearly as glamorous as movies make it seem. Picture this. Moonlight barely peeks through a fog-drenched sky, and you're crouched behind a wooden cart that smells like turnip rot and regret. Every breath you take fills your nose with chimney smoke and something less identifiable. Maybe it's fish. Maybe it's decay. Maybe you don't want to know. You're wearing a coarse wool cloak that scratches your neck like a vengeful ferret. Beneath it, your tunic is soaked at the hem because the streets are less street and more mysterious liquid canal. Medieval sanitation is a fantasy. People toss chamber pots from windows like it's a civic duty. One splatters next to you with all the subtlety of a cannonball. Congrats, you now smell like a war crime. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've got a name nobody remembers and a profession no one wants to talk about. No cool leather armor, no rooftop chase scenes. Just you, the darkness, and streets paved in mud, manure, and bad decisions. The city smells like wetwood, spoiled ale, and burning tallow. Somewhere nearby, a dog is barking like it knows exactly what you're up to. You freeze, hoping the shadows cover the fact that your boots make squishy noises every time you move. Stealth in medieval times is just advanced wishful thinking. Your mission? Slip into a nobleman's home and make sure he doesn't wake up again. Sounds simple. Until you remember that medieval homes aren't made of paper. They're built like wooden bunkers with doors that weigh more than your entire body. Worse, the streets aren't empty. Night watchmen shuffle about, carrying lanterns and cudgels. They're poorly paid, mildly drunk, and alarmingly enthusiastic about cracking skulls. You duck into an alley to avoid one and nearly trip over a pile of turnips again. Always turnips. Historically, medieval cities were chaotic, unlit, and terrifying at night. There were no police departments, just various forms of night patrol, often composed of volunteers or mercenaries who were about as reliable as a drunk goat. And these people have the authority to arrest, or worse, beat you on suspicion alone. You're definitely suspicious. As you edge along a wall slick with mystery slime, a shutter creaks open overhead. You flatten yourself against the stones, barely breathing. A bucket empties onto the street, narrowly missing you. Chamber pot number 2. It's going to be a great night. Historians still argue whether urban sanitation laws were ever enforced in cities like London or Paris. Technically, it was illegal to throw waste into the street, but let's be honest, enforcement wasn't exactly brisk. If the smell didn't kill you, the rats might. And if not them, then dysentery. Or the occasional angry pig. Yes, pigs roamed free and had zero chill. You slosh forward through ankle-deep sludge, trying not to think about how many of your assassin colleagues probably died from tetanus. A muffled cry echoes somewhere in the distance. You're not sure if it's a mugging, a birth, or just medieval street theater. Honestly, all three are likely. The nobleman's manor is still a ways off, but already you're regretting your life choices. Being an assassin sounded cool when that shady guy at the tavern recruited you. Travel, excitement, flexible hours, he said. What he didn't mention was trench foot, lice, and the constant fear of someone mistaking you for a burglar and burying an axe in your back. At a crossroads, you pause. One path leads toward the merchant district, where the streets are narrower but more crowded with crates and crates of salted fish. The other leads past the abbey, quieter, but patrolled by particularly judgmental monks who somehow know when you're up to no good. Probably because they've seen you sneak through before. You opt for the abbey route, because fish smell triggers something primal now. As you pass its ivy-covered walls, you whisper a half-hearted prayer, mostly to avoid bad luck. The monks don't see you, but you do lock eyes with a stray cat who seems to judge your entire existence. And then it hits you. You forgot to bring any chalk to mark your exit route. Rookie mistake. You'll have to remember your way back through sheer memory, which is excellent news considering you once got lost in a forum tavern. Still, you press on, every step squelching louder than you'd like. The noble's manor looms ahead, its windows dark, its courtyard gate locked. You crouch low, hiding behind a barrel of what you desperately hope is wine. The moon slips behind a cloud. For once, luck. Except, right as you prepare to scale the outer fence, a guard sneezes somewhere to your left. Loud. You freeze. The guard coughs, mutters something about bad mutton, then wanders off into the mist. Close one. You'll definitely need new pants after this. Back in the day, many noble homes were fortified, even within city walls. High fences, dogs, and the occasional mercenary guard were standard. Most weren't trying to stop assassins, per se, just the more common threat, angry townsfolk with torches. But it works either way. You finally reach the base of the wall. Time to climb. The stones are slick, your fingers cold, your courage questionable. But you've come this far, so up you go. The wall cuts your palms like it's trying to remind you of your mortality. You reach the top, swing a leg over, and yep, splinters. Of course, the wooden edge isn't sanded. Why would it be? You drop down inside the courtyard and roll into a patch of something suspiciously crunchy. Not gravel, maybe bones, or dried bean pods. You don't have time to investigate. The door ahead is your next goal, and it's bolted from the inside. Because of course it is. You sigh, pressing your back to the door, trying to stay invisible. The wind picks up, and for a moment, you allow yourself to dream of retiring to a monastery. Clean robes, warm soup, no chamber pots. That sounds like a fantasy worth chasing. But not tonight. Your fingers are already numb as you crouch beside the bolted door, considering your options, which are, to be generous, limited. You could try to pick the lock, but your tools are laughably primitive. A bent pin and a sliver of wire, both kept in the lining of your tunic, rubbing against your ribs like itchy shame. There's no master key or magic whisper code, just rust, stubborn hinges, and luck. You fumble with the lock, squinting in the dark. It's less picking and more jiggling things and hoping the mechanism is old enough to be forgiving. In theory, some older locks were so rudimentary that they could be opened with almost anything. In practice, they mostly just didn't open. After a minute of tense fiddling and whispered profanity, softly, so the courtyard pigeons don't narc on you, the door clicks. Victory. Sort of. The creak it makes as you open it is less stealthy entrance and more haunted millennial drama soundtrack. You wince. Somewhere inside, a dog stirs. Of course there's a dog. You step inside, holding your breath, as adjusting to the gloom. The hallway is narrow, wood-paneled, and choked with the scent of tallow candles, roasted meat, and damp wool. Your soft-soled shoes, if you can call shredded leather shoes, muffle your steps, but every floorboard in this house has a personal vendetta. Your assassin's toolkit is embarrassingly small. The blade at your side is dull from too many desperate uses, cutting rope, prying open crates, trimming your toenails once in a pinch. It used to gleam. Now it sulks. Your backup weapon is a garrote made from twine and desperation, and your one vial of poison has leaked slightly, leaving a crusty ring around the cork. You once read a fragment from an old guild manual that claimed, a proper assassin needs only silence, patience, and resolve. You, unfortunately, possess exactly one of those, and it's not silence. You stop at the first door, ear pressed to the wood. Breathing. Someone snoring inside. A guard? A servant? A nun on sabbatical? You don't know, and honestly, you're too tired to care. You ease past, stepping over a discarded boot and muttering a thank you to the gods of peripheral vision. The main hall opens ahead. You duck behind a tapestry depicting some battle or other. Everyone in it looks angry and necklace. Rich people love this stuff. The hallway is lined with oil lamps and brass holders, their flames low and flickering. They cast giant, distorted shadows that make you flinch at your own reflection more than once. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins were organized professionals or just desperate freelancers taking side gigs. One thing is certain, most had no formal training. No secret temples, no epic oaths. Just desperation, a decent knife, and a client willing to pay in coin or food. The target's chambers are upstairs, Of course. You eye the staircase with the same enthusiasm you'd reserve for tax audits and dental surgery. The steps creak with ancient confidence, announcing your presence whether you like it or not. You try to time your ascent with the dog's occasional grunts from downstairs. He's dreaming, maybe chasing chickens. Hopefully not assassins. At the top, you stop again, listening. 2 doors on the right, 1 on the left. You've been told the noble sleeps behind the heavy oak door at the end, under a tapestry of a lion with a sword. Why lions? No one knows. It's probably metaphorical. You draw your blade, not that it'll help much if someone catches you, and slide toward the door. Every inch of you is tense. Your knees pop quietly. You're too young to feel this old. Medieval nobles weren't exactly defenseless. Many kept bodyguards or even private militias on their estate. Others relied on heavy wooden doors, locks, and rooms designed like mini-fortresses. Your target might be sleeping soundly, or he might be sitting awake with a crossbow pointed at the door just in case. Either way, it's up to you to find out. The door opens. Slowly. You peek inside. A fire smolders in the hearth. The noble sleeps alone in a massive bed, its canopy draped with thick velvet curtains. His snores are hearty and wet, like a man truly unconcerned with assassination. A dagger sits on the bedside table, mocking you. You're 5 steps away from completing the mission, and 500 away from getting out alive. You ease forward, the floor groaning beneath you like a teenager forced to clean his room. The noble stirs. You freeze. He turns over. The snoring resumes. You reach the side of the bed, staring down at your quarry. He's older than you expected. Gray stubble, a scar across one cheek, probably from some bar brawl long forgotten. He reeks of mead and roast goose. You raise your blade, your hand trembling more from cold than fear. Maybe. 1 cut. That's all it'll take. But just as you move, he suddenly murmurs something and opens one eye. Just one. You both freeze. Time stops. He blinks, then snorts, and rolls over again, mumbling about spilt ink and fish pies. You're lucky. Or he's very, very drunk. You do what needs to be done, quiet and quick, and it's over. Less dramatic than you imagined. No last words. No epic stare down. Just breath, then no breath. You step back, chest heaving. A mainstream historical fact for your sleepy mind. In medieval Europe, assassinations did happen, but often with political motives and usually through treachery or poisoning rather than midnight stabbings. The romantic idea of hooded killers was more fiction than fact. Still, freelancers like you existed, skirting the edges of legality, caught between warring lords and collapsing guild systems. You cleaned your blade on a scrap of curtain and turned to go. And that's when the dog barks. Loud. Angry. With purpose. So much for silence. You bolt for the stairs, every board shrieking in protest. The house wakes around you. Doors fly open. A voice yells. Footsteps thunder. You leap the last 3 steps, slam into the courtyard door, and burst into the cold night air. The gate's still locked. You scramble up the wall again, fingers slipping. Shouts echo behind you. A crossbow bolt thunks into the wood inches from your head. You don't look back. You drop into the street, knees jarring painfully. You run, slipping, skidding, alive. For now, a shadow in a world of firelight and suspicion. 1 job down. 17 more to go if you want to buy that half-rotted hut by the river. And you still don't have a working map. You run for 3 blocks before your lungs start making a noise that sounds suspiciously like betrayal. The shouting behind you fades, replaced by the usual nocturnal symphony of barking dogs, distant arguments, and the occasional explosion that no one seems interested in investigating. The alley you choose to duck into is a classic, narrow, foul-smelling, and deeply suspicious. But it's familiar, and right now, familiar is the closest thing to safety you have. You crouch behind a barrel of pickled herring and try not to inhale too deeply. If anyone asks, you were never here. And if they push harder, you've always had a twin with a limp and poor impulse control. You press your back to the damp wall and take stock. Hands shaking, blade sticky, breath ragged, but alive. Which, in your line of work, counts as a wildly successful night. For now, assassins don't get debriefings or therapy sessions. You get a few silver coins in a cloth pouch if the client remembers. Maybe a slice of bread if someone's feeling generous. Payment happens under a table or behind a curtain, and no one ever says thank you. The most you can hope for is a grunt and not being stabbed in return. And your handler? He's more myth than man. Shows up like fog, disappears like debt collectors when it's payday. Last time you met him, it was in a tavern storeroom that smelled like mold and lies. He handed you the nobleman's name and said, "Quiet work. No drama." Clearly, he's never been near a staircase. You fish the job token from your sleeve, a flat wooden disc with a crude mark scorched into it. Your proof of completion. It's damp now and starting to curl. You wrap it in a bit of linen and stuff it deep into your boot. Not the most secure system, but then again, nothing about this profession is particularly sophisticated. Historians still argue whether there were truly dedicated assassin guilds in the Middle Ages. Some believe loose networks existed, usually operating under broader criminal umbrellas. Others think the lone wolf model was more common, unattached individuals offering their services to whoever could pay. Either way, being expendable was part of the job description. You hobble to your feet and head toward the Rendezvous Tavern, the Laughing Leper. Charming name. Even more charming crowd. The place doubles as an alehouse, fight club, and minor plague vector. But the back room is usually quiet, and that's where you're told to report when the deed is done. You pass a group of peasants slumped in a doorway, snoring under a blanket that's more holes than fabric. One of them stirs, eyes you, and mumbles something that sounds like duck cabbage. You nod politely, as if this is valuable intel. The tavern squats at the end of a muddy lane like a toad with indigestion. Its sign swings creakily in the wind, the paint flaking off to reveal a sad caricature of a grinning man covered in boils. Marketing was clearly not a priority. Inside, it's all smoke and damp wool and the sharp tang of spilled ale. The air is thick with laughter, groans, and the occasional crash. A bard wheezes into a crumpled flute in the corner, playing what might be a love song or a funeral march. It's hard to tell. You slip toward the back, head down. Nobody pays you much attention. That's the one perk of your trade. Invisibility by reputation. People sense what you are, and they look away. You make them nervous. You're a walking bad omen wrapped in patched-up leather and unresolved trauma. The back room is lit by a single sputtering candle and smells faintly of onions and wet rope. Your handler waits, perched on a barrel like a crow with better posture. He's chewing something stringy, possibly jerky, possibly regret. "You're late," he says without looking up. "There was a dog," you reply, which is all the explanation needed. He tosses you a purse. It jingles, always a good sign. You check it. Enough coins to buy a proper meal, maybe even a bath. You pretend not to feel moved. "Next one's trickier," he says. Of course it is. He slides a parchment across the table. No name this time. Just a location, an abbey on the outskirts of town. The ink is smeared, but the meaning is clear. A job inside a church. Oh good, now you're not just a murderer, you're a blasphemous one. That's bound to improve your karmic profile. You leave the tavern with the mission tucked inside your tunic and a pit forming in your stomach. The abbey is a half-day's walk away. You could rest, but your room in the tenement slum offers all the comfort of a haunted root cellar. And the lice are territorial. So you head toward the gates, trudging through the thinning fog, feet dragging. The city's outer edge is quieter. Fewer people, fewer torches. More shadows. As you walk, your mind drifts. You remember your first job. A man who'd wronged a merchant. You were told it was just business. But the man had kind eyes and offered you soup before you did it. That memory still lingers. Not as guilt. Just detail. You've grown numb to the morality of it all. You don't kill for justice. You kill because rent exists. Mainstream fact. While poison was often seen as a noble tool for discreet elimination, most medieval assassinations, if they occurred, were blunt and messy. Stabbings in the street, ambushes in alleys, or accidents with loose stairs. You, unfortunately, have experienced all three from both sides. The abbey comes into view as dawn starts to gnaw at the horizon. A squat stone building surrounded by low walls and croaking crows. The bell tower rises like a broken tooth against the purple sky. You stop just outside the gate. You'll rest here, in the underbrush, until night falls again. You pull your cloak tight, lay your head against your arm, and try to ignore the fact that something just crawled up your pant leg. Probably not lethal. Probably. Sleep comes slowly. You dream of staircases, always creaking. You wake with a sneeze and a spider on your cheek. The abbey's bell tolls lazily in the distance, as if even the monks aren't fully convinced it's worth waking up. Dawn has burned off the fog, revealing rolling fields and patches of frost. You stretch, crack your back, and quietly remove 3 burrs from your cloak. Professional dignity is hard to maintain when you're picking leaves out of your undergarments. Still, night's on its way again. And so are you. The target, according to your handler's half-muttered description, is a monk. Older, important, maybe corrupt, definitely inconvenient to someone. He lives inside the abbey walls and rarely leaves, which means you'll have to go in quietly and make sure he doesn't wake up tomorrow. Assassins don't often work inside churches. It's not superstition, exactly. It's logistics. Stone walls. Guards disguised as gardeners. Nosy novices with insomnia. And the guilt. Mostly the guilt. You circle the building, ducking low behind hedges and crumbling stone. The architecture is classic medieval, thick walls, tiny windows, and a general air of architectural disappointment. A cold wind snakes around your ankles, and you try not to take it personally. You find a small postern gate near the herb garden. It's meant for servants and deliveries, and it's currently unguarded. Either the monks are trusting, or they assume nobody would ever want to break into a monastery. They're only half wrong. You press your ear to the wooden door, listen. Nothing. Just the distant bleating of a goat and someone chanting off-key. You ease the latch up. It gives with a clunk. Subtlety? Overrated. Inside, the garden is tidy, if a little overgrown. Rows of cabbages sit beside lavender, and there's a weirdly intimidating statue of Saint someone holding a fish. You nod politely to it, just in case. Your boots crunch on gravel as you move toward the cloister. You pass a window with flickering candlelight and duck low. Inside, a few monks are gathered around a table, snoring into their books. One has a quill stuck in his sleeve. Academia is exhausting. Mainstream fact. Monasteries in medieval Europe were often repositories of knowledge, with monks painstakingly copying texts by hand. But they were also political players, landowners, and occasionally corruption hubs. Your target? Probably more of the latter. You slip into a side corridor, the stone floor cool beneath your feet. It smells like ink, old cheese, and sanctified dust. Your footsteps echo, so you remove your shoes entirely and stuff them into your satchel. Socks weren't invented yet, not properly, so it's just cold toes and quiet regret. The monk's cell is on the upper floor, just past the library. That means stairs. Again, you've begun to suspect medieval architecture was specifically designed to torment future assassins. The stairs are narrow and spiral, forcing you to ascend sideways like a crab. One creaks under your weight and you freeze, but no alarm. Just your heart pounding in your ears like a war drum. At the top, the hallway is dim. Tapestries line the walls, mostly depicting saints, sinners, and at least one bearded man riding a goose. Artistic choices were unique. You find the cell easily. The door is carved with a simple cross and has a tiny shutter for food trays. You peer inside. He's asleep. Alone. The room is neat, almost sterile. A cot, a shelf of scrolls, and a wooden crucifix above the bed. Peaceful. You hate it. You unlatch the door and enter. The air is warm and smells faintly of beeswax and parchment. You hesitate. He's old. Thin. Breathing softly. You wonder what he did to earn this fate. Betrayal? Heresy? Or maybe he just knew too much. You step forward. He stirs. Your blade is already out. Quick. Painless. Mostly. He doesn't make a sound, just exhales and doesn't inhale again. You stand there a moment, watching the candlelight flicker across the floor. There's something strangely reverent about this room, despite what you've just done. You wipe your blade on a linen scrap and tuck it away. And that's when the bell rings. Not the usual bell. A sharp one. An alarm. Apparently, the monks do have security. Or maybe someone just happened to peek in through the shutter. Either way, you're no longer alone. You bolt, barefoot and silent, down the stairs, through the cloister, past the fish saint, who now seems to be judging you. Shouts rise. Footsteps echo. Someone calls for Brother Ambrose. You hope Brother Ambrose trips over a goose. You make it back to the garden gate and wrench it open. A monk grabs at your sleeve. You twist, elbow him in the ribs, and sprint across the field like a terrified deer with poor life choices. Behind you, torches flare. They don't chase far, just enough to show they tried. You're already vanishing into the tree-lean, feet bleeding, cloak flapping. You keep running until the abbey disappears behind you, replaced by the glow of distant farmsteads and the not-so-gentle stench of pig pens. You collapse behind a haystack, panting. Your satchel is intact. The job's done, and you have a fresh scratch on your arm from a particularly opinionated rosebush. Historians still argue whether holy targets were off-limits to medieval killers. Some sources claim certain guilds refused such jobs. Others suggest no one cared as long as the coin was right. Ethics were more of a sliding scale back then. You finally put your shoes back on, wincing. One toe is definitely unhappy. You'll deal with it later. Or not. A fringe fact for your drowsy brain. Some monks believed their nightly prayers could actually repel assassins and demons alike. You can now confirm the prayer part doesn't always work. You rest there a while, the stars turning slowly above you. Somewhere, in all hoots. You wonder, briefly, what it would be like to have a normal job. Maybe as a scribe, or a beekeeper, or someone who makes hats for rich people's dogs. But those jobs don't come with coin purses like the one now jingling softly in your bag. And you need one more to make rent. You wake up in hay, covered in hay, and somehow also sneezing hay. The sun's up, but mercifully low, casting everything in that warm golden glow that makes even murder feel a bit poetic. You sit up stiffly, stretch your legs, and try to blink the sleep from your eyes without attracting any farmhands. Rural folk aren't known for their warmth toward mysterious strangers snoring behind their haystacks. You pick the last bit of straw out of your ear and check your satchel. Token? Still there. Coin? Untouched. Dagger? Slightly rustier, but accounted for. All in all, a promising start to a new day of surviving medieval employment. Time to return to the city, though part of you dreads it. The air is fresher out here. No sewage runoff, no shouting vendors, no drunken knights dueling over spilled beer. Just sheep bleating in the distance and the smell of wet earth. You wonder, not for the first time, what it would be like to simply walk away, buy a cart, sell apples, maybe adopt a dog that doesn't bite you. But you're not the apple-selling type, are you? No. You've got calluses in all the wrong places, and your night vision's a little too good. So you do what you always do. Lace up your boots, tighten your belt, and start walking back to the place that barely tolerates your existence. The city gates appear around midday. They're always open this time of year, too many carts going in and out to bother locking them. You pass a tax collector scribbling notes with the same enthusiasm as a man being slowly devoured by ants. He doesn't notice you. You like that. You head straight for your usual inn, the Gasping Piglet. It's a few steps above the Laughing Leper, though not many. The food is marginally less fatal, and the beds come with fewer surprises. Also, the barmaid pretends to like you, which is a rare luxury in your line of work. Inside, the usual crew is assembled. A dice game in the corner. A one-eyed cat curled on a bench. The innkeeper polishing the same mug he's been polishing for 5 years. You nod, he nods. No words needed. He hands you a key with the tired efficiency of a man who's seen things he's not emotionally prepared to process. Your room is small, low-ceilinged, and smells faintly of pickles. But it's quiet, and the window overlooks a courtyard that rarely hosts knife fights. You toss your bag on the bed and sit down hard. The mattress sighs like it knows exactly what kind of day you've had. Just as your eyes begin to close, there's a knock. 3 soft taps. Then silence. You don't panic. Panic is for amateurs. Instead, you stand, unsheath your dagger, and step to the side of the door. "Package for you," a muffled voice says. From a friend. You open the door just enough to see a child, maybe 9, holding a tightly wrapped scroll. No insignia. No wax seal. Just twine and the look of something that might explode, metaphorically or otherwise. You take it, toss the kid a copper, and shut the door. Then you wait. No screaming. No smoke. No curses. You open it. It's a map. Hand-drawn. A manor on the edge of town. Next to it, a symbol you recognize. The same mark as your job tokens. Someone wants you there. Soon. You groan. Your knees are still sore from the Abbey job. But orders are orders. Even vague, cryptic ones sent by medieval Amazon Prime. Historians still argue whether organized contracts were distributed by central guilds or more loosely managed by brokers and handlers. The existence of hit lists is debated. Most agree they were rare, and far more likely among spies or courtly circles than your average cloak-wearing stab artist. Still, maps show up in the records, often with notations, code names, or bloodstains, or all three. You clean your blade, change into your least filthy cloak, and head out. The manor is in a wealthier district, where the buildings are taller, the alleys narrower, and the guards less likely to be bribed. You walk like you belong there, which mostly means not making eye contact with anyone and pretending you can afford shoes without holes. The place is huge, 3 stories of stone and smugness, surrounded by a wrought iron fence and manicured hedges. Clearly, someone very important, or very paranoid, lives here. You scout it for a while, noting entrances, exits, blind spots. The rear servant gate is your best bet, less guarded, with a conveniently stacked pile of firewood nearby that makes for excellent climbing. As dusk settles, you scale the fence with minimal splinters and creep along the hedge line. You slip through the servant gate, duck through the scullery, and find yourself in a dim hallway that smells like roast goose and conspiracy. You're supposed to be meeting someone here, not killing them. For once. A door creaks open to your left. A woman steps out. Tall, hooded, eyes sharp enough to carve cheese. She gestures you inside. You follow, mostly because she doesn't look like the type to wait patiently if ignored. Inside is a parlor. Dusty, thick curtains, expensive books. And another man, older, bearded, with fingers stained by ink. "You're earlier than expected," he says. "Good. They're not clients. They're recruiters. Seems someone noticed your recent work. The nobleman, the monk. The clean exits. The consistent results. They offer you something different. Stability. Regular work. Bigger pay. Fewer backstabbings, literally and professionally. They represent something called the Umbra. Not a guild, not exactly. More like a society. A network of assassins who actually share resources and don't try to kill each other over job overlaps. A professional upgrade. With occasional snacks, if you believe the sales pitch. You say nothing for a long while. Then, what's the catch? The woman smiles. There's always a catch. But not tonight. They give you a token, silver, marked with a crescent, and instructions. Wait for the next job. Don't speak of this meeting. Return to your normal routine. You leave through a hidden stairwell that spits you out 2 alleys over. It's raining now. Soft, steady, cleansing, almost. A fringe detail to lull you to sleep. Some assassin societies were said to use silver coins or specific herbs as silent identifiers. Rosemary tucked in a belt, a silver buckle in the shape of a crescent. Whether this was real or just myth spun by terrified courtiers is still up for debate. Back in your room, you lay the token on the table and stare at it. You're not just a knife in the night anymore. Now you're a knife with membership. Your dreams that night are unsettling. A man with no face handing you a silver token. A door that won't open. A whisper behind you that never quite forms words. You wake up just before dawn, breath caught in your throat and blanket wrapped around your legs like it's trying to kill you. The silver token is still there on the table. Still cold. Still real. You stare at it while chewing a crust of yesterday's bread that could honestly double as a weapon. It's not poisoned. Probably. The coin gleams in the low light like it knows something you don't. Joining a secretive assassin collective should probably feel more life-changing. Instead, it feels like getting promoted from swamp garbage collector to municipal swamp inspector. Same swamp, slightly shinier hat. Still, stability has its perks. No more haggling for work in alleys. No more wondering if your handler's going to vanish with your payment. And hopefully fewer employers who forget to mention that the target is guarded by 7 mercenaries and a small bear. You sling your satchel over your shoulder, stow the token inside, and head to the market. A proper breakfast wouldn't hurt, and if there's one benefit to living in the filthiest part of a medieval city, it's the fish stew. Horrifying to look at, but surprisingly edible. You wander past stalls of eel, bruised apples, and questionable meat pies. A street juggler drops his pins. A bard sings something vaguely obscene about a bishop's cat. You almost smile. Then you spot the pigeon. It's perched on the edge of the fishmonger's stall, unnaturally still, a tiny roll of parchment tied to its leg. The mark of the Umbra. You whistle low, the way they taught you back when you had to beg for jobs. The pigeon hops toward you and allows itself to be picked up, which is frankly more than you can say for most of your friends. The scroll is small. Just 4 words. Cobbler. Midnight. Eastern Gate. That's it. No instructions, no names, no sketches. Just you, a bird, and a deadline. You buy a meat pie you probably shouldn't, then wander the city until dusk. Medieval towns don't offer much in the way of entertainment for freelance killers in waiting. You visit the river, watch 2 children try to drown each other for fun, and dodge a drunken knight dueling a goose. Standard Tuesday. As the sun sets, you find a quiet rooftop and wait. It's surprisingly peaceful up here, chimneys puffing, cats prowling. The world looks less miserable from above. Until someone dumps a bucket of waste out a window, and you remember why you prefer roofs. Midnight comes slowly. You slip down to street level and head for the Eastern Gate. It's quiet. Too quiet. And yes, you hate yourself for thinking that. The cobbler's shop is a squat, timber-frame building squeezed between a candlemaker and something that may have once been a school. A single lantern glows in the window. You knock once, then twice quickly. The door creaks open. Inside, the cobbler's shop smells of leather, glue, and someone's failed attempt at cooking cabbage. Shoes line the walls, dainty ones, sturdy ones, and one pair that looks like it belongs to a very fashionable ogre. At the back stands a woman, older, apron dusted with ash. She doesn't look like an assassin or a target. But then again, you don't either. Shoes, she asks flatly. Repairs, you reply. She nods and locks the door behind you, then gestures toward a wooden hatch in the floor. You descend. Below the shop, in what should have been a root cellar, is a hidden room. The walls are lined with scrolls, maps, weapons, and 3 others already waiting. A wiry man with too many teeth, a bored-looking woman sharpening a needle-thin dagger, and a boy no older than 15 who's either very calm or very stupid. The cobbler speaks. You've been chosen for your ability to disappear, to go unnoticed. Tonight's contract requires precision. Silence. She lays a scroll on the table, opens it. A sketch of a man, sharp chin, smirking mouth, eyes like a weasel trying to remember if it left the stove on. Nobleman. Lord Harwin of Stag's Hollow, she says. He'll be at the bishop's masquerade tonight, under heavy guard. But we don't want you to kill him. You blink. This is new. We want you to mark him, she continues. Slip this into his drink. She hands you a vial of reddish liquid. It won't kill him, but it'll make him very, very talkative. We need information. You'll have a 2-minute window before his men notice. The others look unimpressed. You're intrigued. This is cleaner, smarter, less blood, more brains. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins worked jobs beyond killing, like espionage or political manipulation. Some records mention infiltration, theft, even staged accidents. But much of it is speculative. Written history tends to focus on who died, not who talked. You suit up. No weapons beyond a boot knife and the vial. The others will cause a distraction. You'll be the ghost. The masquerade is being held in a rented guild hall, 2 stories of stained glass and overcompensation. You slip in through a servant's corridor, mask already on plain, black, forgettable. The room is packed. Laughter, music, the clink of goblets. Nobles in peacock feathers and velvet, sweating under too many layers. You spot Harwin by the fire, flirting with someone's bored wife. You move closer. A tray of drinks passes. You snag one. Time slows. As he laughs and reaches for a goblet, your fingers brush his. You smile, twist the vial open under your sleeve, and let 2 drops fall into the cup. He drinks. You vanish. A minute later, Harwin is singing, loudly, off-key, about grain prices and illicit letters. His guards look horrified. You're already out the back door. Fringe tidbit. Some nobles believed in truth herbs, strange brews said to force confessions or reveal secrets when drunk. Historians aren't sure they worked. But in your hands tonight, it certainly seemed effective. You return to the cobbler's cellar just before dawn. The others are already there, debriefing. The woman nods at you. Good work. No ceremony. No payment yet. Just trust and the knowledge that you're now in the inner circle of something larger. You're still not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. You step out into the morning fog, the city slowly waking, unaware of what just shifted beneath its surface. One more job done. One less secret in the dark. By the time the sun climbs high enough to make the rooftops shimmer with heat, you've already walked the length of 2 districts, dodged 3 beggars, and politely declined a street preacher's offer to cleanse your soul with cabbage water. Sleep? Overrated. You're riding the strange buzz that follows a successful job, not quite pride, more like mild disbelief that you're still alive and unpaid. Back at the gasping piglet, your usual table awaits. It's the one by the crooked fireplace, under a mounted deer head that looks perpetually horrified. You order broth and bread, both stale, both familiar, and settle into the low hum of tavern noise. You think back to the mission. No blood spilled. No alarms raised. Lord Harwin is probably still confessing secrets to a potted plant. You wonder what the Umber will do with the information. Sell it? Leverage it? Laugh about it over drinks? You're not sure, and honestly, you don't care unless it somehow involves your neck. Halfway through your second spoonful, a shadow falls across your table. You glance up. A courier stands there, barefoot, patchy beard, the kind of expression that suggests he's been chased by dogs more than once. He holds out a sealed pouch. No words, just the pouch. You take it, toss him a coin, and he vanishes like guilt at a church fundraiser. Inside, another token, smaller than before, and a note. Training. Dusk. South Quarry. Wear gray. You sigh. A nap would have been nice. But orders are orders. The South Quarry lies just beyond the city walls, where stone was once cut for the Grand Cathedral until someone realized the stone had an unfortunate habit of flaking apart mid-construction. Now it's mostly abandoned, good for hiding bodies, holding meetings, and hosting surprisingly competitive illegal wrestling matches on weekends. You arrive early, as always. The quarry is a maze of jagged pits and shallow caves, bleach pale under the setting sun. A few shrubs cling to life on the rim, and the air smells of dust and regret. You find them in the third pit, 6 figures, all dressed in shades of gray, all masked. One of them steps forward. Lesson 1, they say. You're not special. Good start. You spend the next 3 hours crawling through gravel, climbing walls slick with moss, and dodging weighted sandbags that come swinging out of nowhere. It's like boot camp designed by someone who hates bones. You learn how to run silently over uneven terrain, how to disarm without killing, and how to throw a dagger in the dark using only your ears to track movement. Spoiler, you miss a lot. One drill involves submerging yourself in a freezing pond while reciting false names and pretending to cry. You're told this builds psychological endurance. Mostly it builds pneumonia. At one point, someone shoves you. You shove back. A brief scuffle ensues, and while you win, your shoulder now clicks every time you breathe. Worth it. The instructor, a woman known only as Ash, tells you that the best assassins don't just kill. They shape outcomes. Sometimes with blades, sometimes with rumors, sometimes with a well-placed note inside a noble's pocket. Historians still argue whether medieval assassin groups actually engaged in formalized training. There's little evidence of structured academies, though certain families, especially in Italy and the Middle East, passed down methods through generations. Some believe contracts came with learning periods. Others claim assassins were entirely self-taught and worked alone out of necessity. The truth, as always, is probably muddled. Ash pulls you aside as the sky begins to darken. "You're quick," she says, "but you hesitate. That'll get you killed." You want to argue, but she's right. You think too much. Analyze. Weigh risk. Not always ideal when someone's swinging an axe at your face. "Next week, there's a test," she says. "Don't fail." Then she's gone, like a whisper wrapped in chainmail. You limp back to town, legs heavy, shoulder throbbing. But you've learned something, several somethings, actually. Like how to disarm a sword with a soup spoon. Or how to balance your weight across a squeaky floorboard. Or that most assassins are, quite frankly, terrible at team-building exercises. You return to your inn, collapse into bed, and wake up with a crow staring at you from the windowsill. It has a ribbon tied to its leg. This one's different. Fancier. Someone spent time braiding the ribbon, which is both unsettling and unnecessarily artistic. The message it carries is short: observation assignment. No contact. No elimination. You'll know who. Vague, as usual. But you're starting to understand the rhythm now. Ambiguity is armor. The less you know, the less you can betray. You set off just before dawn. The location isn't listed, but a second note in the pouch shows a sketch of a distinctive bridge over the East Canal. You know the place. It's where vendors sell roasted chestnuts and rich men come to sigh dramatically when they're feeling poetic. You arrive early. Take a seat on the opposite bank. Pretend to be asleep. A fisherman nearby hums tunelessly. A child tries to sell you a dead ferret. Then you see him. Dark cloak. Gold trim. Moving too quickly for a noble, but too confidently for a servant. He stops halfway across the bridge and glances around. Your job? Watch. That's it. For 2 hours, you observe. He meets no one. Leaves nothing behind. Just stands there, now and then muttering into his sleeve. When he leaves, you follow. At a distance. No contact. He heads toward the western edge of the city. Into the merchant district. Past the tanneries, the spice shops, the mask sellers. Then he disappears down a trapdoor behind a butcher's stall. You wait. A bell chimes. And then he's gone. Just gone. You blink. Rewind every movement in your head. Recheck the map. Look for signs. There's nothing. Not even a footprint. You return to the inn in silence, the mystery lodged behind your eyes like a splinter. This wasn't a job. It was a lesson. You weren't watching him. You were being watched. You don't sleep that night. It's not fear exactly. Not even adrenaline. It's that slow, crawling unease. The feeling that someone just moved a piece on a board you didn't know you were standing on. You were told to observe, and you did. But now you realize you were the test. The assignment wasn't about the man on the bridge. It was about you, your patience, your awareness, your ability to follow orders without cracking. Welcome to the real world of medieval assassins, not a whirlwind of blood and steel, but a slow, calculated maze of psychological warfare. Where trust is a currency that devalues faster than milk in summer. At breakfast, your innkeeper eyes you warily. Maybe it's the dark circles under your eyes, or the way your fork keeps missing your mouth. You manage half a bowl of barley porridge and a boiled egg so overcooked it could serve as a projectile weapon. Then comes the knock. A soft triple tap at your door. No one should know your room. No one should knock like that. You open it. It's Ash. She doesn't speak. Just hands you a scroll and walks away like this is a normal Tuesday and not a cryptic initiation into Death's favorite fan club. The scroll is longer this time. Target: Guildmaster Serenus. Merchant Guild. Accused of smuggling rare relics and betraying Umbra interests. Location: Guild Hall, Upper Market. Task: interrogation and message delivery. No death. Leave mark. You've heard of Serenus. Fat man. Likes rings. known for underpaying apprentices and overcharging for pepper. Not exactly your typical high-stakes target, but apparently the Umbra has a score to settle. Leave mark. Those words sit heavier than you expect. You know what it means. Not just a threat, but a warning carved in skin or symbol. One that says we see you. It's brutal PR, and it works. You spend the day preparing, scouting the market square, noting guard patterns, counting exits. You notice things differently now, which tiles creak, which doors stick, which alleyways funnel sound, and which swallow it. Historians still argue whether organized assassin groups in the Middle Ages maintained codes or messages, like the infamous symbol of the Crimson Thistle in Eastern Europe or silent gestures exchanged in Italian guilds. Some accounts speak of marks left on doors, bodies, or even coins. Others dismiss them as romantic inventions. Either way, fear was the real currency. By nightfall, you're ready. You scale the back wall of the guild hall just as the taverns are hitting full volume, using a rope that's frayed in all the wrong places. You find an unlocked window. Clearly, Serenus doesn't expect nighttime visits unless they involve bribes or baked goods. Inside, the place reeks of opulence and dried fruit. Velvet cushions, imported rugs, a suspiciously large number of ornamental vases. You sneak past shelves of scrolls and locked cabinets labeled in code. Somewhere, a clock ticks like it's mocking you. You find him asleep in a chair, half snoring, half choking, draped in brocade like a child playing king. You almost feel sorry for him. Almost. You slip a cloth over his face, soaked in a concoction they gave you last week. Smells like old wine and rotten lavender. He wakes just enough to mumble a confused syllable before slumping unconscious again. Now comes the hard part. You pull out the small branding iron Ash provided. The Umbra's mark, a stylized crescent with 3 dots. Not fatal, not cruel, just enough to smart, to scar, and to haunt his nightmares. You heat it over the guild's fireplace. It hisses when it meets his shoulder. You whisper into his ear as he stirs. We see you. Make amends. Or next time, we carve deeper. That's your message. Clean. Precise. No murder. Just a reminder that he's not untouchable. Fringe fact. In some medieval regions, including parts of Germany and northern Italy, public shaming marks were burned onto criminals, not always to punish, but to warn others. Some say underground groups co-opted this practice as part of their own justice system. Of course, no court would admit it. You vanish before the smoke clears, retracing your route down the alley and into the tangle of streets like a thread pulled through cloth. Back at the inn, you expect silence. Instead, a note awaits on your pillow. Well executed. Sleep well. For now, no signature. Just the Umbra's mark, sketched in soot. You lie down, and for the first time in days, sleep doesn't evade you. It sneaks up quietly, like a cat curling around your spine. You dream of a banquet. Serenus is there, flanked by shadows. They toast to secrets and speak in riddles. When you look down, you're holding a knife made of smoke, and the food on your plate is a map with no names. In the dream, you're laughing. But it's not a happy laugh. When morning comes, the city sounds sharper. You feel something has shifted inside you. You've crossed another threshold, no longer just a blade for hire, but part of a system with rules, signals, loyalties. You're still not sure if you like it. Over breakfast, your innkeeper says someone dropped off a package. It's a simple box. Inside, a clean shirt, a pouch of coin, and another message. New identity. You're now Lorien the Scribe. Report to the city archives. Trust no one. And just like that, you're in deep again. An alias. A cover job. Something bureaucratic, probably boring, and almost certainly dangerous. But this is how it works. Sometimes you wear black and move in silence. Sometimes you wear ink stains and pretend to catalog scrolls. Either way, you're still a weapon, just in a different sheath. The city archives smell exactly how you imagined. Damp parchment, moldy wood, and the lingering ghost of too many ink-stained hands. You arrive as Lorien the Scribe, complete with a wax-stamped letter of introduction, forged so finely even the archivist at the front desk squints and nods with respect. Your new role? Copyist. Quiet. Invisible. In the back corner by the rat hole and the shelf that leans a little too far left. You sit at a slanted desk with a quill that's seen better centuries and begin the mind-numbing task of transcribing property ledgers from a decade ago. It's all feudal taxes, boundary disputes, and noble signatures that look like someone sneezed mid-stroke. But this isn't just busy work. You know that. Somewhere in these records is something or someone the Umbra wants you to find. You learn quickly to blend in. You hunch your shoulders like someone accustomed to paper cuts. You mutter to yourself when people pass, faking irritation at imaginary ink blots. The other scribes accept you without much fuss. No one wants to make small talk in a room where the loudest sound is parchment curling in the humidity. Days pass. You copy, listen, observe. Patterns emerge. You notice which nobles have land disputes with oddly fast resolutions. You spot how some properties change hands between cousins who never existed last week. You see names appear in marginalia, scratched out, rewritten, replaced. Most people wouldn't notice. You're not most people. Then there's his name, Ser Arton Vale. Not a lord, not even a knight. Just a provisioning officer for the city's grain supply, according to the ledgers. But he appears in too many places with too many overlapping roles. Grain here, land there, trade permissions over there, and always near districts where the Umbra operates. You find 4 fake names tied to his purchases, and yet the same looped V shows up on every signature. This is the thread you're meant to pull. You make a note in your own shorthand, a cipher you learned 2 weeks ago involving birds, breakfast foods, and a lot of dots, and slip it into your sleeve. You don't report it yet. You wait. Because in this world, being too eager is just as dangerous as being too slow. That night, you return to your room, and there's a note under your door. Dinner. Tavern behind the candle makers. Back booth. We're brown. No signature. As always, the tavern smells like mutton stew and regret. You find the booth. There's a man already there, sipping ale from a chipped mug. He gestures for you to sit, never looking up. I'm called Flint, he says. I handle the boring parts. Paper. People. Patterns. You don't ask who sent him. You already know. You show him your notes. He nods once, slowly. Good catch, he says. Ser Arton has been greasing wheels we didn't even know had axles. He pushes something toward you. A key wrapped in wool and a scrap of paper with an address. Storage cellar behind the grain warehouse, he says. Check it out. No witnesses. The job is clear. You're not killing anyone tonight. Just snooping. But still, no witnesses can mean a lot of things. You wait until just before dawn. The warehouse sits near the east gate, where rats outnumber people, and even the guards don't patrol too thoroughly. The cellar door creaks open like it's auditioning for a horror play. Inside, barrels, sacks, crates. The usual. But then you find the false wall. Behind it, a narrow room. And inside that, ledgers. Not city ones. Personal ones. Artons. You scan quickly. Lists of bribes paid to officials. Shipments rerouted. Names of smugglers. Some crossed out, likely dead. You memorize what you can, pocket 2 sample pages, and slip out into the morning fog. The key, of course, doesn't go back with you. You toss it into a sewer grate, where it joins the city's forgotten ambitions. Historians still argue whether medieval spycraft involved elaborate paper trails like this. Some insist Real agents worked mostly by word of mouth. But fringe evidence, like ciphered letters found in monastic vaults and hidden compartments in abbey walls, suggests that even the most secretive groups left paper footprints, tiny breadcrumbs for their successors or as insurance in case they were silenced. Back at your desk, you resume copying as if nothing happened. The scribe beside you sneezes into his sleeve and apologizes to the scroll. By midday, another note arrives, this time rolled tight and slid inside a goose quill. Phase 2. Test Arton's loyalty. Intercept his runner. Swap the message. Make it subtle. You don't even blink anymore. Just finish your sentence about tax exemptions for goat herders and stretch. Later, you find the runner near the market square. Young. Nervous. Too clean to be local. You accidentally spill a basket of fish entrails near him, causing enough chaos to swipe the scroll he's tucked in his belt. Inside, a request for payment confirmation from a shipping contact. You craft a perfect replica, same parchment, same seal, but the message reads differently now. It subtly implies the contact is raising the price. You wait until he's distracted cleaning fish guts off his boots and slide it back into place. He never notices. You don't even stay to watch the result. You don't need to. Arton will receive the altered message. He'll respond. The Umbra will watch how he reacts, whether he balks, blames, or betrays. And you? You'll keep writing about goat herders and pretending your ink stains are just clumsiness. Because that's your life now. Invisible. Integral. You're no longer just a blade. You're a gear in a dark, whispering machine. You don't remember when you last signed your real name. It hits you one afternoon while filing a stack of transport manifests under the alias Lurian. You pause with the Quilmadere, staring at the practiced loops of a name that isn't yours, and realize that even your own signature feels foreign now. It's not alarming, just strange. Like borrowing someone's shoes for so long you forget what your own feel like. This is what happens when the layers pile up. The lies stack. The roles blur. Assassin? Scribe? Spy? Messenger? You're all of them. And somehow none of them. That week, things shift again. Flint sends another note, this time with a fine dusting of gray powder on the seal, means urgency. You're to report to a tailor in the merchant district. Sounds innocent. It's not. The shop smells like linen and candle wax. The man behind the counter measures your shoulders without a word, then asks in perfect monotone, "Do you prefer crimson or dusk shade for the funeral?" It's the code. You reply as trained. I was hoping for something quieter. Maybe ash. That's it. You're in. He nods once and gestures to the back. Behind a curtain, Ash is waiting. She's pacing. That's never good. We've lost 3, she says without preamble. One was caught in the lower wharfs. One simply vanished. One, well, we'll find pieces eventually. You nod, throat dry. Not because of fear, exactly, but because now you understand why they've pulled you in deeper. We think someone's hunting us, she says. From inside. There it is, the ultimate nightmare in any shadow guild. A traitor. Not a clumsy outsider or an ambitious noble dabbling in espionage, but someone within. Someone who knows the signals, the safe houses, the schedules. Your new task? Find the leak. Which means a new role. Historian. Yes, seriously. You're being embedded in a monastery on the city's outskirts. The Abbey of St. Marin, a peaceful, book-stuffed place known for its illuminated manuscripts and uncomfortable silence. According to Umbra intelligence, the Abbey has become a hub for information exchange. Harmless scribes, you think? Hardly. Those quiet little monks move letters, transcribe secrets, and occasionally slip messages into bread shipments like medieval USB drives. Fringe fact time. Some medieval abbeys did function as low-key hubs for encrypted communication. Though rarely discussed in textbooks, there are documented cases of epistolary monks acting as neutral couriers or record keepers for rival factions, including the church and local militias. Historians still argue whether these monks were willing participants or just really unlucky scribes in the wrong time zone. You arrive 2 days later, dressed in dull brown robes, carrying a forged letter from a bishop who doesn't exist. The abbey gates open with a groan. Inside, it's all stone corridors, drafty halls, and the kind of quiet that seems designed to make you doubt your own heartbeat. Your name here is Brother Elias. You join the scriptorium on day 1. Long benches, scratching quills, sooty light from high windows. The manuscripts you copy are mostly biblical texts and saintly biographies, but occasionally something slips in, a coded letter in the margins, a folded scrap between pages, a symbol drawn where no monk would dare. You keep your head down and your ears open. Within a week, you've narrowed it down to 3 suspects. Brother Kellen, the gatekeeper. Too friendly. Knows who's coming and going. Hums when he's nervous. Brother Matthias, the cellar monk. Always has ink on his hands, but hasn't touched a quill in days. And the abbot himself. Calm, unreadable, too perfect. Ash warned you once. Never trust a man with clean hands in a dirty trade. You test the waters. You spill wine near Brother Kellen's scrolls, just a splash. Watch his reaction. He doesn't blink. But you notice a small paper tucked inside his sleeve, when that's not there the next day. You drop a coded line while speaking to Matthias. The ink runs thin when secrets soak the page. He flinches. Not much, but enough. With the abbot, you try silence. You say nothing during confession. You mention no sins, no prayers, no longings. He notices. And when he speaks to you the next day, his words are too pointed. Even a blank page reveals something. That's when you find it. Hidden in the margins of a manuscript on martyrdom, a tiny, delicate drawing of a crow perched atop a crescent moon. The umber's sigil, but mirrored. A traitor's mark. Someone's been sending warnings. Or possibly mapping Umbra's safe houses to sell. You copy it exactly and send it with Flint's contact in the abbey, an old monk who pretends to be half-deaf and fully harmless. The man winks at you before limping off to the vestry. By the next week, 2 of your suspects are dead. Brother Kellen is found face down in the stables, trampled by a horse that was supposed to be lame. Brother Matthias vanishes after Vespers, his chamber stripped bare. The abbot still smiles, still speaks in perfect riddles. Ash writes, "We think the abbot's working with an outside broker." Confirm. Eliminate. Just like that. A man of the cloth. A potential killer. A chess piece to be removed. You spend another 3 days watching him. Then, late one evening, you follow. He leaves the abbey grounds by the south garden, where the hedges grow thick and wild. He's fast, for an old man. And he's not praying. You trail him through the dark, damp outskirts, keeping to the shadows, until he arrives at a small cottage near the woods. Inside, a merchant. A man with a satchel of coin. They speak in low tones. You don't need to hear the words. You already know. You wait until the merchant leaves. Then you step inside. The abbot doesn't flinch. "I wondered when they'd send someone," he says, smoothing his robe. "Let me guess, Elias isn't your real name." You say nothing. "Just draw the knife." "You'll replace me?" he asks. "Or simply vanish after?" You still say nothing. Because tonight, you're not a historian, not a monk, not even a spy. You're what the Umber made you. A whisper in the dark. A warning no one hears until it's far too late. The abbot falls without a sound. You wait for the breath to leave his body. Then one more minute, because the Umber drilled into you. Dead men have twitched before. Finally, you fold his hands neatly over his chest, like he's mid-prayer, and whisper a brief apology to the ceiling beams. You're not cruel, just thorough. The cottage is silent except for the pop and hiss of the candle near the window. Outside, wind shuffles the trees like pages of a book no one dares read aloud. You find what you came for. A ledger beneath a loose floorboard. Coded, but Umber style. He wasn't just selling scraps of knowledge. He was mapping the guild itself, inch by inch. Safe houses, drop points, pseudonyms, even the locations of assassins in deep cover. You destroy it right there. Fire, blade, the edge of your boot, until all that remains is ash and the metallic tang of regret. That night, you return to the abbey. Nobody notices your absence. The monks are too absorbed in their prayers and parchment. As dawn bleeds through the stained glass windows, you take your seat at the scriptorium as Brother Elias once more, quietly copying the life of Saint Elwin, who once meditated on a rock for 12 years and invented 3 new ways to be silent. By midday, your relief arrives, a man posing as a wandering novice. You recognize him by the way he adjusts his robe, left sleeve first, always. You pass him a folded scrap, one name, one confirmation. By sunset, you're gone. Back in the city, Ash greets you with a curt nod. No praise, no questions, just another assignment, handed over like it's a laundry list. But this one's different. "We've got a problem," she says. "Not a leak this time. A thorn." You raise an eyebrow. "A vigilante," she explains. "Someone's targeting our agents. No coin trail, no guild ties. Just death. Efficient, silent, and personal." You pause, frowning. A rival guild? She shakes her head. We would have heard. This one's freelance. Maybe even ex-Umbra. Someone with training. You're to investigate. Find them. Neutralize. Simple enough. If it weren't for the unsettling detail Ash adds at the end, they're leaving messages. Latin. Ecclesiastical. And one of them was carved into a rooftop beam, 6 stories up. Oh good. So not only are they killing assassins, they're literate and athletic. Your first clue takes you to the slums outside the western gate. An Umbra courier was found dead, slumped in a fish barrel. Not a scratch on him, just one tiny puncture under the left ear. You check the scene. Look for exit routes, roof angles, shadow lines. All clean. Too clean. Whoever did this knew the rhythm of the guards, the layout of the district, the timing of deliveries. And they knew where Umbra hands moved through the city. You find the message carved under the barrel lid. Fiat voluntas tua. That will be done. Subtle. Ominous. A little theatrical, frankly. The trail leads you next to a shrine carved into the cliffs. Another Umbra agent, this one older, former interrogator, found in prayer position, hands clasped around a dagger that wasn't his. Message, et ini nos inducas in temptationem. Let us not into temptation. And now you're spooked. Not just by the killings, but by the precision. These aren't chaotic strikes. They're surgical, ritualistic, even, and all laced with scripture. You retreat to one of the quieter safe houses, an attic above a tailor's shop with walls thick enough to muffle confession, and dig through Umbra archives. That's when you find it. The name, Caldus. Supposedly dead. A legend, if you believe the older agents. Trained in the early years of the guild, disappeared after a botched mission involving a bishop, a poisoned chalice, and a very public confession that sparked a minor religious schism. Some said he died in exile. Others claimed he'd turned pacifist, or mad, or both. But you? You start thinking maybe he went freelance. Maybe Caldus didn't vanish. He just rewrote the contract. Fringe tidbit time. Some medieval mercenaries who disappeared from service records were later rumored to have re-emerged as vigilante agents for rival factions, or as rogue operators who viewed the political chaos of the era as divine reckoning. Historians still argue whether men like these were ideologically driven, or simply bored killers in need of new purpose. Back on the street, you begin your real search. You retrace the vigilante strikes. Watch rooftops. Question fence sitters and alley informants. Even the pigeons seem nervous around you now. Days pass. Then one night, while following a suspect near the grain docks, you sense it, the shadow behind you. You spin, blade drawn. But there's no one, until a voice whispers, "You shouldn't have come this far." He's there, not hiding, just waiting, cloaked, calm, older than you expected. Not a ghost, but close. Caldus? You ask. He doesn't answer, just tilts his head, like a crow inspecting a corpse. You're killing your own, you say? No, he replies, voice like sand over marble. I'm killing what they've become. You lunge. He dodges. Not fast, efficient. Every movement is small, controlled. You land a cut on his shoulder. He doesn't flinch. Then he disarms you. With your own technique. The fight ends with your back to a wall and his dagger pressed to your throat. You still have a choice, he says. Walk away, or be buried with the others. He steps back, gone before you hit the ground. You sit there, panting, shaken, more than from the fight, because Caldus isn't just better than you. He's cleaner, more principled, and now you're questioning everything. The Umbra, the guild, yourself. That's the most dangerous part. Not the knife, the doubt. You spend the next 3 nights in silence. Not because of orders, not out of fear. You just don't know what to say anymore. To Ash, to Flint, to yourself. Caldus haunts you, not like a ghost, but like a reflection you weren't ready to see. The kind of man the Umbra used to produce. Clean, cold, conviction behind every move. Not some blurred bundle of forged papers and moral compromises wrapped in a black hood. You start dreaming in Latin. On the 4th night, Flint summons you. The meeting place is a disused bathhouse, tile cracked, roof sagging, steam long gone. He's pacing for once. A bad sign. We've confirmed 6 more, he says. All Umbra. All clean kills. No witnesses. Messages at every site. He tosses you a bundle of parchment, carefully inked Latin in neat Gothic script. Almost poetic. You read aloud, Sed libera nos a malo, but deliver us from evil. Then another, Nali Timir. Be not afraid. And one that makes your chest tighten, Ego sum via, veritas, et vita. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Flint leans in. This isn't random. He's choosing them. Sending a message. Like he wants us to see the decay. You raise an eyebrow. Is he wrong? That earns you a glare. But neither of you says what you're both thinking. Maybe the Umbra deserves the pruning. Still, Flint's voice hardens. We're hunting him now. All operatives on alert. And you're bait. Of course you are. They staged the trap in the Cathedral District. Classic irony. Draw the holy killer to a holy place. You're to pose as a new Umbra courier, carrying falsified names of traitors. You make sure your route leaks. You walk. Hood down. Blade hidden. Pull slow. And right as you pass beneath the gargoyled eaves of St. Barrett's, the shadow falls behind you. This time, you don't run. You turn. He's there. Caldus. But something's different. He's not cloaked. Not armed. He's holding a scroll. You reach for your dagger. He doesn't flinch. Just hands it to you. I was wrong, he says, voice hoarse. It's not rot. It's infection. You open the scroll. Inside, names. Dozens. Not just Umbra targets. Nobles. Priests. Merchants. Kingsmen. All marked with tiny symbols. I've been tracking them, Caldus says. They're using your guild as camouflage. Feeding it. Twisting it. The Umbra's not just decaying. It's being replaced. You glance up. He's already walking away. You return to Flint. Present the list. He reads it in silence, jaw tight. Then, we knew some of these names. He stares at you. You trust this. You don't answer. Instead, you ask, what if he's right? He exhales slowly. Then we're all on the wrong side of the knife. A week later, everything changes. Ash disappears. Flint resigns, retires via suspicious accident. And you? You're assigned to the guild's inner tier. A circle few even believe exists. The cradle. You descend. Literally. The entrance is through a stone stairwell beneath the city archives. Down past where the rats get uncomfortable. Into a library with no books. Only scrolls wrapped in velvet and secrets older than the cathedral walls. You meet them. 3 figures. No names. They wear rings etched with labyrinths and speak in the present tense as if the past didn't quite end. We've seen your reports, says the one on the left. We believe Caldus is misguided, adds the one on the right. We need you to clean the wound, says the middle. They slide forward a new scroll. Target, Caldus. Location, unknown. Status, high-risk asset. Directive, execute or recruit. You leave with a dry mouth and a heavier dagger. Days blur into weeks. You track leads across every district, monasteries, markets, slums. Caldus moves like mist, always one step ahead. But eventually, he finds you. In the aqueduct tunnels beneath the southern wall. He doesn't attack, just watches. You've seen the rot, he says. You nod. And yet you stay. Another nod. You still believe the Umbra can be saved? You pause. Then, rewritten. That makes him smile, faintly. Then maybe you're not a lost cause. He disappears again, but this time he leaves you something. A map. Inked on sheepskin. Marked in Umbra glyphs you haven't seen since your earliest training. It shows the cradle. Its entrances. Its exits. Its personnel. It's an invitation. Or a warning. You spend the next day decoding it, heart hammering. Because this isn't a plan to destroy the Umbra. It's a plan to cut out the infection and start fresh. Caldus wants to gut the guild from the inside. And you're beginning to think he's right. Mainstream historical fact? The medieval world saw countless secret sects rise and fall from within institutions, monastic orders that splintered, knightly groups that became political threats. Internal purges weren't uncommon. Power bred dissent. Historians still argue whether these collapses were due to ideology or just bad bookkeeping and worse tempers. You stare at the map, at the sigil etched in the corner, not the umber crow, but a single, stylized eye. Watching. Waiting. Are you with me? Caldus had asked. You never answered. But your hands already moved to pack your things. A blank ledger. A fresh dagger. And your real name, tucked into your boot like a keepsake. Because if this next part goes wrong, you want them to know who walked into the cradle and why. The cradle doesn't welcome visitors. It absorbs them. You re-enter not as bait or blade, but as something quieter, a scribe reassigned, tasked with internal restructuring. A few new faces give polite nods. One offers you salted fish and a look that says, I know what you're here for. They don't. Not yet. Your cover is solid. The falsified orders bear Ash's old cipher. The ring on your finger has been custom forged with the guild's latest seal, thanks to a smith you once saved from a jealous husband with a poorly aimed throwing axe. Call it karma. Your quarters are tucked deep in the archives, a cell-like room with a narrow bed, one ink pot, and walls so damp they sweat. But you like it. Simple. Honest. You spend the first 3 days doing nothing but copying scrolls, mostly treaties and old execution orders. One features your own handwriting from years ago, when you forged a confession from a cardinal who was actually blameless. You wonder now if that was Caldus' first clue. You listen, you watch, and slowly, the cradle reveals its sickness. There's the counselor who smuggles relics in exchange for noble favors. The handler who sends green recruits into meat grinder missions just to erase debts. The archivist who edits documents posthumously, changing who gets credit or blame. You note every name, every hallway camera, every loose stone that could conceal a blade, because the plan is forming now. Not Caldus anymore. Yours. You've started dreaming again. But now it's not Latin prayers or bloodied hands. It's just a room. Silent. Clean. A place where the guild could begin again, if it had the stomach to cut itself open. Fringe detail? Some early secret societies, notably those in 14th century Venice, believed in purification by schism. They deliberately fractured their own orders to remove corruption, forcing remaining members to reforge purpose. Historians still argue whether it worked, or just made room for worse men to rise. Your first move comes during the equinox banquet. Its tradition, rich food, wine from a sealed cask, and stories about the glorious shadows the guild once cast. You slip away early, excuse mumbled about intestinal issues and too much eel. But you're not headed to the privy. You're going to the central archive room. Because the cradle keeps its worst secrets close and buried. Behind the archive's third shelf is a stone panel. You discovered it yesterday, disguised by years of soot. A pressure plate opens it. Behind, a chamber holding ledgers the public face of the Umbra never dared admit existed. Here, you find it. The master record. Names of every operative turned asset, scapegoat, or ghost. Assignments that never made the scrolls. Missions meant to fail. Histories rewritten. And one entry in particular. Your first mentor. You remember him as gentle. Too gentle, they said. The record calls him a traitor and claims he hanged himself. You remember it differently. He didn't hang. He was found drowned in an alley barrel, mouth stuffed with parchment. The Umbra road is ending. Tonight, you begin to rewrite theirs. You copy only what you need. Not too much. Just enough to expose. The plan's next phase involves 3 steps. Step 1. Recruit quietly. The guild is full of disillusioned hands. You find them, one in the map room, one among the food runners, and one, most surprisingly, in the cradle's own confessionarium, where tired agents go to spill sins to wax sealed listeners. They all say the same thing. We thought we were alone. Step 2. Leak partial truths. You leave scraps in places where curious eyes will find them. Memos rewritten. Order summaries left accidentally open. Enough to raise doubt, but not panic. Step 3. Coordinate a silent freeze. You and your recruits arrange for a night when key targets are rendered immobile, not killed. Immobilized. Sleep drafts and wine. Rope traps in quarters. Locks switch silently. It's not a coup. It's a cleanse. You choose the date. Feast of Saint Odric, patron of secrets. The night arrives. Everything moves like a shadow through wet silk. By dawn, 6 corrupt counselors are bound, gagged, and marked. With what? Not blood, but ink. Your mark. Not the crow. The eye. Caldus meets you on the rooftops at sunrise. He's seen the signs. He knows. You thought he'd be pleased. He just looks tired. You've started a new war, he says. You nod. Not one with blades. He laughs quietly. No such thing in this guild. But he passes you something anyway, a seal ring, identical to the ones the cradle wore. You'll need this, he says, to unwrite the rest. Then he walks away. And this time, you don't follow. Because this is your story now. The Umber isn't dead, but it's something else. Something watching, whispering, waiting to become real. Mainstream fact? Medieval guilds often endured internal reform, sometimes violently. The infamous Black Company of Florence turned on its own leaders, rewriting their charter in ink and blood. Historians still argue whether it saved the guild or simply renamed the poison. You walk back into the cradle, unhooded, unafraid, and the doors close behind you with the sound of something ending and something else beginning. The cradle holds its breath. No alarms ring. No blades flash. The bound officials are quietly escorted out, some weeping, some cursing, one simply humming an old tavern song with glassy eyes. You wonder how many actually believed in what they were doing, or if the rot had just become routine. You don't dwell. Not tonight. Instead, you sit in the briefing chamber, the one with the arched ceiling and the table shaped like an open scroll, and wait. The surviving inner circle trickles in, fewer than a dozen, all staring at you. Not your face, not your blade, your ring, the eye. You tap the stone table. Once, twice. New doctrine, you say? Effective immediately. You expect argument, resistance. What you get is silence. Then someone nods. Another exhales. Someone murmurs, about time. Turns out, the sickness had been noticed for years. Whispers shared in empty stairwells. Doubts scribbled in the margins of night reports. But doubt is dangerous in a guild of knives. Until someone dares to act, nothing shifts. You were the knife. Now you're the hand behind it. The reforms begin. You purge the archives. Not just the dirty names, but the myths, the inflated missions, the martyrdoms that were really cover-ups. You keep what's useful. You burn what isn't. Ash smells like liberation. You rewrite the oath. Gone is the line about unseen obedience. Now it reads, we observe. We endure. We choose. Recruitment standards change. No more orphans plucked from gutters. No more blood pacts at age 10. Now, applicants must write essays. Yes, really. About philosophy, morality, civic responsibility. Half the old guard thinks you've gone soft. The other half finally sleeps at night. Still, cracks remain. There are outposts beyond the capital that haven't accepted the shift. Old captains sending cryptic letters. Training camps that refuse new doctrine. One even scrawls, "The eye watches nothing," on a dead messenger and sends him back. You realize the Umbra isn't a guild anymore. It's a belief system. Fragmenting. So you do something unthinkable. You reveal it. Not all of it. Just enough. You orchestrate a leak. Documents stolen and posted in the city square. Redacted mission reports. Lists of shadow negotiations. Proof that a hidden hand had always nudged the kingdom's direction. The public? Shocked. Outraged. But fascinated. The nobility scrambles. The crown does nothing. Not out of confusion, but because they've always known. They just never imagined the Umbra would come forward. You hold a public forum. Yes, really. No hoods. No masks. Just you and a few brave operatives answering questions in a stone amphitheater by the riverbank. You explain that the Umbra still exists, but now its blade cuts only when truth fails. You call it the revised compact. Historians will someday call it arrogant, maybe foolish. You call it survival. Fringe detail? In early 15th century Prague, a shadow guild known as the Ordo Lucerna revealed itself to the public in response to rising heresy and unrest. They offered protection, intelligence, and truthful intervention. Their legacy was short-lived, but parts of their charter echo in modern civic surveillance protocols. Historians still argue whether they were protectors or manipulators in better robes. Your announcement splinters everything. 3 Umbra satellites declare independence within a week. One burns its own headquarters to the ground. One sends you a poisoned fruit basket. You re-gift it to the archivist with a sense of humor and a strong liver. But within the cradle, the shift solidifies. You no longer give kill orders. You offer choices. When a traitor is found, they're confronted, given a chance to speak. To account. Only if they refuse is the blade drawn. Some call it weakness. You call it justice. Caldus never returns. You hear whispers of a new sect forming beyond the marshes, built around him. Not as a man, but a symbol. They call themselves the Lantern. Their agents wear no hoods. They operate openly, offering light in darkness. It's ironic. The man who once killed in secret now inspires transparency. Historians still argue whether the Lantern ever truly existed, or whether it was just another face of the eye, rewritten by hopeful romantics. Years pass. You train new recruits. You retire old ghosts. You even return to the bathhouse where Flint once briefed you. It's a bakery now. You buy a crusty roll and sit on a bench where so many missions began. You think of Ash, of the ledger in your boot, of the name you never used again. You watch pigeons argue over crumbs and wonder what kind of assassin you've become. Not a good one, perhaps, but maybe, just maybe, a better one. You're older now. Not old in the aching joint, tooth losing, back in my day way. Just weathered. Calloused in places people can't see. Your eyes stay open longer in the dark, and silence feels heavier. Not threatening, just full. The cradle no longer hums with secrets. It breathes. You walk its halls each morning. No escort. No fear. You nod to the mapmaker with the glass eye. You sip weak tea brewed by the archivist's apprentice, who has started leaving you notes with questions. What makes a mission just? Why are we still hidden? Would you kill me if ordered? You answer them all. Honestly, even when the answers are messy. The Umbra has shifted. It's leaner, sharper, less concerned with maintaining power, more focused on intervention. Small things, quiet things. You intercept a corrupt tax collector before he can bankrupt a village. You uncover a baron's plot to poison the city's wine supply during the spring festival, one drop at a time. You stop a war with a single intercepted letter. But you no longer do it alone. There are 13 eyes now. Not heads. Not generals. Eyes. Watchers. Deciders. Each trained not just in infiltration and extraction, but in restraint. You host debates. You allow votes. Sometimes, you lose them. That's how you know it's working. Mainstream history tells us many medieval secret societies collapsed under the weight of internal contradictions, too rigid, too shadowy, too obsessed with survival to evolve. But a few, like the Sicilian Beatty Pally, are rumored to have shifted into civilian roles, helping the poor and protecting the innocent. Historians still argue whether they were justice bringers or vigilantes with delusions of virtue. Still, you sleep lightly, because shadows don't vanish. They move. You get word one morning, a coded message left under a bench at the baker's. 2 symbols, intertwined blades, broken at the hilt. You recognize it. It's the mark of the old-school loyalists. The ones who believe the Umbra should have stayed pure, silent, lethal, apolitical. You knew they were out there. But this is a challenge. Not a declaration. Not a message. A warning. Your new recruits don't understand it. They ask, why would anyone want to go back? You tell them gently, some people don't want truth. They want clarity. Rules so simple, they forget to question them. So you prepare. Quietly. You tighten protocols. You revise the compact. You add new training modules, focused not just on stealth, but on philosophy, ethics, leadership. You build redundancies. If the eye falls, others must rise. You don't expect it to be you forever. In fact, you're not sure it should be. So you begin to mentor a successor. They're younger. Smarter, probably. Funnier, definitely. They call you the reluctant founder behind your back. You pretend not to hear, but you smile when they ask the hard questions. One day, they ask, "Did you ever regret staying?" You pause. Not because the answer is complicated, but because it's too simple. "No," you say. "I regret not staying sooner." They nod. Then they ask, "What happens if they come for us?" You lean back, sip cold tea. Then we see how many of them remember how to hide. Fringe detail? There's a disputed folk tale from 15th century Wales about a secret order called the Du-Ligad, the God's Eye, who trained not just assassins but archivists, artists, and poets. Their purpose was to record history as it truly was, not how rulers wanted it told. They vanished after a suspicious fire in a monastery, but some say their records survived, passed down orally in cryptic lullabies. Historians still argue if this was legend or an elaborate metaphor for intellectual rebellion. The eye lives, not as a weapon, as a mirror, reflecting what's broken, and sometimes, just sometimes, helping fix it. That night, you visit the rooftop garden, the one Caldus always favored. It's quiet. The stars don't answer. The wind doesn't ask. But you speak anyway. "I think we're getting closer," you whisper. Then you laugh. Or at least, "We're not getting worse." You sit in the dark for a long time. Not because you're waiting for something, but because, for once, you don't have to run. Your successor takes over quietly. There's no ceremony, no grand pronouncement, just a set of keys, real ones, cold iron with intricate grooves, and a bundle of encoded parchments. You hand them over with a faint smile and a single sentence, "Try not to burn the place down." They laugh, and you mean it as a joke. Mostly, you step back, not out. You become the archivist. A ceremonial title, sure, but with real teeth. You curate the cradle's living memory, reports, letters, maps, confessions. You rewrite them, not to flatter, but to clarify. No more vague heroics. Just choices, actions, consequences. You're telling the truth now, or at least trying to. Sometimes, people knock at your door in the middle of the night, unsure whether they're allowed to. You always say yes. They bring nightmares, questions, occasionally a bottle of plum wine and stories that end in long silences. You keep a candle burning. The umbra isn't perfect. Sometimes you still fail. A mole slips past. An innocent dies. A job goes sideways and someone ends up disappeared, not debriefed. But now, there's accountability. The compact demands review. You sit on every tribunal, even when the faces staring back are pale and shaking. You never raise your voice. You just ask questions. Sometimes they cry. You don't stop them. Mainstream history often erases the mechanics of power, how decisions were really made behind the scenes, beyond kings and councils. But scholars now believe that many spontaneous revolts or policy shifts in medieval courts were actually orchestrated by whisper networks, operatives, messengers, insiders. Historians still argue whether these figures were state agents or rogue actors with shadow agendas. But you know the truth. Sometimes, it's both. You finally visit your childhood village. It's strange, walking those streets as a ghost. The tavern still stands, though it leans now, and the old woman who once cuffed your ear for stealing onions is blind and mostly deaf. She doesn't recognize you, but she offers bread anyway. You sit with her. Break it in silence. The crust tastes like guilt and smoke. You leave behind a sealed letter, one you wrote years ago, never mailed. It explains everything, or tries to. You never ask if anyone reads it. Some nights, the past taps on your shoulder. You remember that mission in the Lake Country, the one with the forged ledger and the poison lord. The woman you spared, against orders. The way she looked at you, half grateful, half horrified. You find out, years later, that she raised her son to be a magistrate. He passed anti-corruption laws. You wonder if your mercy mattered, or if it was just luck. Fringe tidbit? There's a controversial 14th century document, The Mirrors of Smoke, found in the ruins of a German priory. It's a series of philosophical questions allegedly used by a clandestine order to test moral reasoning. One asks, is it nobler to end evil with a clean knife, or to endure it so others may not bleed? Historians still argue whether it's authentic or a post-war forgery. One morning, your successor brings a report. A former Umbra cell has resurfaced across the sea, calling themselves the True Eye. They operate like the old days: blackmail, poison, zero tolerance. Their sigil is your face, etched on coins they leave after kills. You choke on your tea. You want to laugh. But it's not funny. You realize something then. No matter how much you change, someone will always mythologize the you that bled. They'll turn your choices into commandments, your regrets into strategy, your worst days into curriculum. You write a statement, not a proclamation, just a page. You call it the tempered path. It says, we are not justice. We are not vengeance. We are memory sharpened by responsibility. The blade exists, yes, but it is sheathed until silence becomes complicity. You don't ask anyone to follow it. You just file it under founding principles and walk away. The eye still watches. But now, sometimes, it also sees. That night, you sit by the river. You spot someone watching you. Hooded, still, just beyond the torchlight. You don't move. You don't need to. They step forward, slowly. Then they kneel. Not in reverence. In apology. They place a token on the ground. A silver coin split down the middle. The symbol of the True Eye. Broken. You nod. They disappear into the mist. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe not. But for the first time in a long time, you feel hope. Not the loud kind. Just the sort that flickers quietly, like a candle in the cradle, and doesn't go out. Your days now are slower. Not uneventful, just less drenched in adrenaline and rooftops. You still rise before dawn, still walk the perimeter of the cradle. You still test locks, check pressure plates, revise ciphers. But it's ritual now, not defense. It keeps your mind sharp. You've taken up gardening on the south wall, herbs mostly. Basil, lavender, something the monks call wound leaf. It smells like menthol and regret. You dry it in bunches and hang it from the rafters. The cradle smells less like old parchment now, more like a tea shop run by a forest witch. It's oddly comforting. And then, the letter arrives. No seal. No sender. Just a name you haven't heard in decades, etched in charcoal on the envelope. The whispered bride. You feel your chest tighten. A memory stirs. A wedding that never happened. A betrayal staged like a performance. A rival assassin who danced through empires with blades for hairpins and laughter like wind chimes. You were enemies once. Then allies. Then something more dangerous, friends. Possibly lovers. You never dared clarify. The letter is brief. Just a location, a time, and a phrase from your training days. No masks, no shadows. You go, of course. You don't even pretend to consider not going. It's a ruined monastery on the edge of the salt marshes. Half submerged. Birds roost in the belfry. There's no ambush, no cryptic messages, no poison tea. Just her. Older. Not old. No one in your trade grows frail. We die first. But her eyes have the same depth as yours. The same quiet ledger of things done and left undone. She speaks first. You still walk like you expect someone to kill you. You smile. You still smell like honey and secrets. She laughs. I missed you. You sit for hours. You talk about the wars that never made the scrolls. About missions that only mattered to the people who were saved. About choices. Regrets. Victories that didn't feel like winning. Mainstream historians rarely track the interpersonal lives of operatives. They treat spies like chess pieces, interchangeable and cold. But modern scholarship is starting to ask different questions. Who did these agents love? Who did they lose? Historians still argue whether emotional attachments were liabilities or a kind of armor. She tells you why she called you here. Not for nostalgia. For help. She's found something. A library. Buried beneath an abandoned fortress across the sea. Rumor says it contains letters from the earliest Umbra founders, before the Compact, before the Eye, before it became what it is now. If it's real, it could rewrite everything. It could show how the first assassins weren't soldiers or saboteurs, but monks. Archivists who chronicled abuses of power, then acted in secret when no one else could. She wants you to go with her. Just one last time. You say yes. You don't even pause. You tell your successor. They frown, but don't stop you. Will you come back? They ask. If I can. That's all you promise. You and the whispered bride travel like pilgrims, quietly, cloaked, with forged papers and borrowed names. You sleep under stars, drink rainwater, and break codes scrawled in stone. It's exhilarating and terrifying. You're not young anymore. Your body reminds you. Your knees ache in the morning. Your left hand twitches when cold. You bleed slower, but bruise deeper. But your mind is sharp. Sharper, even. You reach the fortress. It's worse than described. Overgrown. Flooded. Guarded by more myths than bricks. But the entrance is real. A tunnel. Sealed with a riddle only someone trained in the old ways would recognize. What is seen when the eye closes? You smile. The answer, of course, is truth. Inside you find it. Not scrolls. Voices. Crystal orbs. Each holding echoes. Memories sealed in sound. One plays a conversation between the first three agents. They argue, not about targets, but about purpose. Should the eye serve rulers? The people? No one. They never agree. The orbs end with silence. But that silence feels intentional. A challenge. Historians still debate the origins of medieval clandestine networks. Some claim they were offshoots of religious orders. Others insist they were formed by displaced scholars. Fringe theories even suggest they were founded by women, widows, and herbalists, who understood discretion and consequence better than most. This discovery, if real, might suggest all of them are right. You and the bride leave the fortress just before a storm hits. You don't speak for hours. Finally, she says, "What now?" You think for a long time. Then, we tell them. She arches an eyebrow. Everything. You nod. Enough. You part ways at the border. No fanfare. Just a clasped hand and a promise to meet again, should the wind allow it. You return to the cradle with the orbs. Your successor watches one, silently, then turns to you and asks, "Does this change who we are?" You shake your head. No. It just reminds us why. You wake up before dawn, as always. But something's different. The cradle is quieter than usual, not hushed, not still, but reverent. The kind of silence that suggests a turning page. You pull on your coat, still dusty from the marshes, and make your way down to the scriptorium. A courier waits for you there. She hands you a sealed box, no markings, no signature. Inside? A mask. Your old one. Reforged in darkwood and burnished silver. The stylized eye, but closed. It's not a summons. It's an offering. Someone has declared a new principle within the Umbra, transparency through shadow. Operatives can now voluntarily record their own versions of missions, archived anonymously, then reviewed years later for discrepancies. Truth, albeit indirect. The initiative is called the Lantern Project. You're skeptical at first, but then you hear one. A mission gone wrong. The operative confesses their hesitation, their mistake, their guilt. They name no names, no targets, just the feeling of failing and still surviving. You feel something loosen in your chest. You contribute too, not all at once. Carefully, one memory at a time. You begin with something small. The smell of the stable before your first kill. The flicker of the candle. The moment you almost ran. You don't lie. You don't grandstand. You just remember. Mainstream history tends to divide people into great figures and faceless masses, but you know better. Power has always been distributed through rumor, suggestion, leverage, and those who pull strings from the shadows. Historians still argue whether that influence was ever ethical, but they often overlook how many of those string pullers also documented what they did, quietly hoping someone would one day understand. You hope the lantern changes things, but you're not naive. You know the compact is still fragile, that other factions grow impatient, splinters of the eye who see the new direction as weakness. Some still believe in absolutes. You get a letter from one such group. They call themselves the Ash Rule. No nuance, no reform. Their motto? Only clean fire purifies. They claim to know your secrets, to know about the whispered bride, about the orbs, About the masked boy you let live in year 6 of your service. They demand your silence. You read the letter 3 times. Then you burn it, slowly, letting the ash swirl into your tea like a bitter spice. You do not respond. You prepare instead. You gather a small team, trusted, balanced. None of them killers first. You teach them to listen, to question, to doubt. You call them the quiet circle. They don't issue orders. They interpret missions. They help weigh action versus consequence. It's controversial. Some elders call it dangerous. But you remind them, we were always dangerous. We just didn't admit it. You return to the cradle's vault. Not for weapons. For stories. Old ones. Misremembered ones. Conflicting accounts of the same moment. You start compiling a new book. You call it The Tensions of Silence. It's not a manual. It's a meditation. Each chapter ends in a question, not a conclusion. For example, what is mercy in a world without witnesses? And, if peace is bought with lies, was it peace at all? Fringe tidbit. There's a recently uncovered manuscript in a Sardinian monastery, a set of riddles believed to be left by a 13th century Umber defector. One reads, when the truth becomes a blade, will you still draw it? Historians still argue whether the author was a real operative or just a disillusioned monk with a flair for drama. You host your first quiet circle tribunal. Not a punishment, just a reckoning. An operative who broke protocol, but saved a village in doing so. You ask, would you do it again? They don't hesitate. Yes. You nod. Then we need to rewrite the protocol. People murmur. But no one objects. That night, someone leaves a flower on your door. A wound leaf blossom. Pressed flat. No note. You understand its meaning. Gratitude. You keep it between the pages of your notebook. A small, silent reminder that reform can begin in whispers, not declarations. The cradle begins to change. Not visibly. Just subtly. Walls are repainted in lighter tones. The old weapons display is replaced by a collection of intercepted letters, real ones. Messages between families, lovers, rebels. Tiny glimpses into lives almost crushed by someone else's mission. You make it required reading for new recruits. Understand who you save, you tell them, but also who you interrupt. Some recruits leave. Most stay. You're not here to convert. You're here to offer a different lens. And maybe, just maybe, give the next generation of shadows a chance to choose who they become. Because no one offered you that choice. And that still haunts you. You feel it in your bones now, the weight of time. Not the kind that slows your steps or dims your vision. The kind that settles behind your eyes. A pressure. A knowing. You walk the same corridors you once sprinted down, but now you notice the mortar between the stones, the dust in the corners. You notice the places where your presence has smoothed the floor. You're not just part of the cradle anymore. You are the cradle. And yet, the world continues shifting outside these walls. Another courier arrives. This one bears a badge you haven't seen in years, a stylized falcon etched into a wax seal. The mark of the Black Talon, a rival guild of assassins turned corporate mercenaries. Once barbaric, then sophisticated, now alarmingly organized. They want a meeting. Neutral ground. A crumbling aqueduct south of the borderlands. You sigh. Nothing ever stays quiet forever. You arrive cloaked in fog and suspicion. Their envoy is young. Too young. Barely out of training, though her eyes betray experience. You notice the small things, the calluses, the ink-stained nails, the way she steps where stone won't echo. She respects you. But she's not afraid. I'm here to negotiate, she says plainly. Over what? You ask. Territory. Method. And narrative. That last word catches you. She explains, the Talon has begun publishing their own history, documenting missions, crafting myths, reframing the public perception of covert agents from monsters to misunderstood architects of peace. It's all propaganda, of course, but clever, glossy, popular. She proposes a trade. They'll acknowledge the Umber's role in stabilizing key regions during the War of Six Thrones if you allow them access to the Lantern Project archives. You laugh. Loudly. No, you say. But thank you for the comedy. Mainstream history always tends to simplify rival factions. The Talon were once painted as savages, knife-wielding anarchists with no discipline. But historians still argue whether they were in fact the earliest practitioners of decentralized espionage, using a hive mind approach long before modern intelligence cells. Fringe documents even suggest their founder was originally part of the Umbra and defected after refusing to eliminate a lover. The envoy doesn't seem surprised at your rejection. She offers a second deal, joint authorship on a historical dossier about early medieval covert orders. You don't answer right away. Because it's tempting. Because for once, the history might be written with nuance. But also because the act of co-authoring history with a former enemy feels poetic. You tell her you'll think about it. She nods, hands you a small leather-bound book, and disappears into the mist. You return to the cradle and open the book. It's filled with marginalia, notes written by junior Talon operatives reflecting on past missions. Some are sarcastic. Some are haunted. One, in particular, strikes you. If I become a hero, does that mean the target becomes a villain? What if we were both just desperate? You read it twice. Then again. And you realize something. The future of your profession isn't shadow and steel anymore. It's story, narrative, legacy. You gather the quiet circle. You propose a new directive, historical symmetry. For every mission recorded in the archives, a second account must be pursued from someone affected. Not for balance, not for guilt, but for context. Some oppose it. One calls it a betrayal. You respond calmly, it's not betrayal to admit we're not gods. It's integrity. The vote passes barely, but it passes. You spend the next week revisiting old missions. Not the glamorous ones. The messy ones. The ones where you hesitated. Where you got lucky. Where your actions echoed louder than you intended.